Water fluoridation is a peculiarly American phenomenon. It started at a time when asbestos lined our pipes, lead was added to gasoline, PCBs filled our transformers, and DDT was deemed so safe and effective that officials felt no qualm spraying kids in school classrooms and seated at picnic tables. One by one all these chemicals have been banned, but fluoridation remains untouched. For over 50 years government officials have confidently and enthusiastically claimed that fluoridation is safe and effective. However, they are seldom prepared to defend the practice in open public debate. Fluoridation is unethical because it violates the individual's right to informed consent to medication. The municipality cannot control the dose of the patient. The municipality cannot track each individual's response. It ignores the fact that some people are more vulnerable to fluoride's toxic effects than others. Some people will suffer, while others may benefit. It violates the Nuremberg Code for human experimentation. I am quite convinced that water fluoridation, in a not-too-distant future, will be consigned to medical history. Water fluoridation goes against leading principles of pharmacotherapy, which is progressing from a stereotyped medication of the type, 1 tablet 3 times a day, to a much more individualized therapy as regards both dosage and selection of drugs. The addition of drugs to the drinking water means exactly the opposite of an individualized therapy. No physician in his right senses would prescribe for a person he has never met, whose medical history he does not know, a substance which is intended to create bodily change, with the advice: take as much as you like, but you will take it for the rest of your life, because some children suffer from tooth decay. It is a preposterous notion. Fluoridation is unsafe because it accumulates in our bones and makes them more brittle and prone to fracture. The weight of evidence from animal studies, clinical studies and epidemiological studies on this is overwhelming. Lifetime exposure to fluoride will contribute to high rates of hip fracture, in the elderly. It accumulates in our pineal gland, possibly lowering the production of melatonin, a very important regulatory hormone. It damages the enamel of a high percentage of children. Between 30 and 50% of children have dental fluorosis on at least 2 teeth in optimally fluoridated communities. There are serious, but yet unproven, concerns about a connection between fluoridation and osteosarcoma in young men, as well as fluoridation in the current epidemics of both arthritis and hypothyroidism. In animal studies, fluoride at 1 ppm in drinking water increases the uptake of aluminum into the brain. Counties with 3 ppm or more of fluoride in their water have lower fertility rates. In human studies, the fluoridating agents most commonly used in the US not only increase the uptake of lead into children's blood, but are also associated with an increase in violent behavior. The margin of safety between so-called therapeutic benefit of reducing dental decay and many of these endpoints is either non-existent or precariously low. Fluoridation is inequitable because it will go to all households, and the poor cannot afford to avoid it if they want to, because they will not be able to purchase bottled water or expensive removal equipment. The poor are more likely to suffer poor nutrition, which is known to make children more vulnerable to fluoride's toxic effects. Very rarely, if ever, do governments offer to pay the costs of those who are unfortunate enough to get dental fluorosis severe enough to require expensive treatment. Fluoridation is inefficient and not cost-effective because only a small fraction of the water fluoridated actually reaches the target. Most of it ends up being used to wash the dishes, to flush the toilet, or to water our lawns and gardens. It would be totally cost-prohibitive to use pharmaceutical-grade sodium fluoride, the substance which has been tested as a fluoridating agent for the public water supply. Water fluoridation is artificially cheap because, unknown to most people, the fluoridating agent is an unpurified hazardous waste product from the phosphate fertilizer industry. If it was deemed appropriate to swallow fluoride, even though its major benefits are topical, not systemic, a safer and more cost-effective approach would be to provide fluoridated bottled water in supermarkets free of charge. This approach would allow both the quality and the dose to be controlled. Moreover, it would not force it on people who don't want it. Fluoridation is unscientifically promoted. For example, in 1950, the US Public Health Service enthusiastically endorsed fluoridation before one single trial had been completed. Even though we are getting many more sources of fluoride today than we were in 1945, the so-called optimal concentration of 1 ppm has remained unchanged. The US Public Health Service has never felt obliged to monitor the fluoride levels in our bones, even though they have known for years that 50% of the fluoride we swallow each day accumulates there. Officials that promote fluoridation never check to see what the levels of dental fluorosis are in the communities before they fluoridate, even though they know that this level indicates whether children are being overdosed or not. No US agency has yet to respond to the finding that fluoride accumulates in the human pineal gland, even though this information was published in 1994, 1998, and 2001. Fluoridation is undefendable in open public debate. The proponents of water fluoridation refuse to defend this practice in open debate, because they know that they would lose that debate. A vast majority of the health officials around us and in other countries who promote water fluoridation do so based upon someone else's advice, and not based upon a first-hand familiarity with the scientific literature. The second-hand information produces second-rate confidence when they are challenged to defend their position. Their position has more to do with faith than it does with reason. Those who pull the strings of these public health puppets do know the issues and are cynically playing for time and hoping that they can continue to fool people with the recitation of a long list of authorities which support fluoridation instead of engaging the key issues. The promotion of fluoridation is based upon the exercise of political power, not on rational analysis. The question to answer, therefore, is why is the Public Health Service choosing to exercise its power in this way? Motivations, especially those which have operated over several generations of decision makers, are always difficult to ascertain. However, whether intended or not, fluoridation has served to distract us from several key issues. It has distracted us from the failure of one of the richest countries in the world to provide decent dental care for poor people, the failure of 80% of American dentists to treat children on Medicaid, the failure of the public health community to fight the huge overconsumption of sugary foods by our nation's children, even to the point of turning a blind eye to the wholesale introduction of soft drink machines into our schools. Their attitude seems to be, if fluoride can stop dental decay, why not the controlling sugar intake? The failure to adequately address the health and ecological effects of fluoride pollution from large industry. Despite the damage which fluoride pollution has caused, and is still causing, few environmentalists have ever conceived of fluoride as a pollutant. The failure of the RCEPA to develop a maximum contaminant level MCL for fluoride in water which can be scientifically defended. The fact that more and more organofluorine compounds are being introduced into commerce in the form of plastics, pharmaceuticals and pesticides, despite the fact that some of these compounds pose just as much a threat to our health and environment as their chlorinated and brominated counterparts, i.e. they are highly persistent and fat-soluble and many accumulate in the food chains and are body fat. Those organizations and agencies which have acted to limit the wide-scale dissemination of these other halogenated products seem to have a blind spot for the dangers posed by organofluorine compounds. So while fluoridation is neither effective nor safe, it continues to provide a convenient cover for many of the interests which stand to profit from the public being misinformed about fluoride. Unfortunately, because government officials have put so much of their credibility on the line defending fluoridation, it will be very difficult for them to speak honestly and openly about the issue. As with the case of mercury amalgams, it is difficult for institutions such as the American Dental Association to concede health risks because of the liabilities waiting in the wings if they were to do so.